What's up guys, Jamie here from the Flying Scotsman, and in today's video we're going to be demonstrating how to put together a flight plan using SimBrief by Navigraph. We're then going to jump into the aircraft, which will be an A320neo today, carry out our pre-engine setup, overhead panel, MCDU setup, get the aircraft ready for push and taxi, and then taxi out to the runway and then follow a pre-planned departure sequence. Now, hopefully, if we're lucky today, we will have air traffic control online on the VATSIM network. So the plan is to try and demonstrate to those who are not overly familiar with air traffic control communications or even VATSIM in general of how to do it properly and feel confident when you're doing it as well. I found when I first started played flight sim on the VATSIM network that I didn't really have the confidence to use it because I was tuned in, I could hear all the pilots and the controllers talking to each other, but I didn't really know the terminology or the kind of base structure on how you're meant to communicate. So I'll break that down very simply for you today, and hopefully in turn that will give you the confidence to activate VATSIM and just add another layer of immersion onto your flight sim experience. So what we'll do here, as you can see on my screen, we've got our SimBrief page loaded up. Now SimBrief is provided by Navigraph, and it is a free bit of software that you can access by simply just signing up. There are paid subscriptions, which give you, again, just another layer of detail, which I'll go into here briefly today, but I'll then save the full detail for a future video. So, how do we create a flight plan and what's involved? Well, the first thing you want to do is jump over to this new flight button on the left-hand sidebar. When you get to the flight plan entry page, you'll be presented with quite a lot of information that you think you might have to input. Now, don't worry, a lot of this information can be automatic, meaning you don't have to put it in. The software will automatically calculate and generate this for you, but you are welcome to manually enter everything. And there's a lot of things that will just be automatically generated by the software itself as well. So the first thing you want to do in the flight info bar is basically tell SimBrief who you are. So today we're going to be flying an EasyJet flight, which is identified by the EZY identifier on the ICAO network. Now, every airline has its own. For example, British Airways is BAW. So you want to make sure that your airline has got the right identifier in there. And you can find these online on the ICAO website as well. Now you want to select in your flight number. We'll just click 272, just completely random. There's no rhyme or reason to it whatsoever. And then the next thing you want to put in here is your departure airport. Now we're going to be departing from Edinburgh today, so I'll put in EGPH, and the plan is to fly south down to London's Gatwick, which is EGKK. The alternate will leave on auto, and that will just set as an alternate destination should the situation arise where we're unable to complete our approach into Gatwick, maybe due to bad weather or an ongoing incident or operation on the ground. So that's us now, completing section 1, unless you want to obviously alter your departure time. So our departure time is currently set for 15:25 UTC. We'll leave that as it is at the moment. Now you then need to tell the planner what aircraft you're planning to fly today. So we, as most of the time, are going to be flying the Airbus A320neo. And the specific variant we're going to be operating is the Phoenix Simulations A320 CFM turbofan engines. And what that'll do is that'll automatically generate a climb and descent profile for you. Now the climb profile ultimately means that you're operating 250 knots below 10,000 feet, 300 knots above 10,000 feet, and then through your transition to high altitudes you'll be on Mach 7.8. And then it's an indirect inversion for a descent profile as well. Now your cost index is ultimately just how cost efficient your flight is going to be. A higher cost index means more speed, less fuel efficiency, and a lower number means lower speed, higher fuel efficiency. This will automatically generate for you, but I'm going to select 8 in here because I think it's quite a nice balance. Your fuel factor, we're going to leave that today. We'll select that on another video, but you can get a brief description here of what it does. And then your call sign is what you're actually going to use to communicate with air traffic control. So every single communication you send to them, you need to tell them that you are EasyJet 1872 so they can find you on their radar. Your registration, G is the registration code for United Kingdom, and then the 4 letters afterwards is just whatever you want it to be to suit anything really. Your favourite football team or whatever, it doesn't really matter. We're going to leave fin and SELCAL codes today. We'll catch them in a future video. Now, one of the reasons I like to fly EasyJet is because of this option here, OFP layout, operational flight plan layout. Every single airline, or most airlines, have their own structure on how they like to lay out their flight plans. And I, as I will demonstrate shortly, just find that EasyJet has a far more simplistic layout than any other airline which I have operated from. Now, your AIRAC cycle, you want to double check this is up to date. So we can just jump up to the top corner and see the green logo here. We're on AIRAC 2502, which is ultimately an update from February 2025. And we can see in here that we've got 2502 loaded, which is 20th of February, and that'll expire on the 19th of March when we'll get the new AIRAC cycle. Taxi out time, I'm going to reduce this down to 5 minutes because Edinburgh is quite a small airport. I don't anticipate too much time on the taxiway. And then similarly with Gatwick, quite a small airport, we'll just increase that slightly to 10 minutes. Obviously larger, busier airports where you've got longer routes from the runway to the stand and vice versa, you want to make sure that you're factoring in enough taxi time just so your fuel planning can be as close as possible. We're on an instrument flight rules flight today. You can also set up visual flight rule flight plans on SimBrief. And that is going to conclude the selections part of the flight planning. Now down to our optional entries, we've got our scheduled block time. We've got our runway 24 departure, 26 left approach and landing at Gatwick. These are automatically selected from the current ATIS information for both those airports. Now what I'm going to do today is I'm going to leave altitude, passengers, freight, payload and zero fuel weight on auto at the moment. Sometimes when you mess around with these, for example, if you set full passengers, you need to be careful and you need to know your aircrafts pretty well before you start plugging the rest of the information in, because you don't want to get into the simulator and then find out you've overloaded the aircraft and you're exceeding your maximum takeoff weight or your maximum landing weight. Then you need to start either coming out the sim or making changes inside the sim, and it then has a knock-on effect to your climb profile, your fuel efficiency. So you want to just pretty much leave these on auto at this stage unless you know what you're doing. Now your fuel planning section, again, you've got your contingency fuel, your reserve fuel, your taxi fuel, etc. I just leave all this on auto and zero, and then we'll let the simulator handle that. And then text entries, we'll just leave that as it is at the moment. Now, as you can see here, we've got our selected route, and that's also represented on the right-hand side map. Shows departure out all the way up to Glasgow, right-hand turn over to Edinburgh. So, I'm very sorry, we're flying the other way, so we're coming out of Edinburgh on runway 24, 240 degrees, making a left-hand turn down towards Holy, and then in to intercept and approach for runway 26 left at Gatwick. We're following a GOSAM 1 Charlie departure out to the GOSAM waypoint, then we'll follow all the way down to a DISIT arrival and DISIT 1 Golf approach procedure, which could change. We'll need to confirm that with air traffic control once we actually get into the sky. So I'm now comfortable that that flight plan is complete, so we need to generate the flight plan now, and to do that, all we do is come up to the top and click on Generate Flight. This will run through, build the maps, build the flight plan, and put everything together for you. And then there's various other tools we can look at once this is complete. So we've got our flight plan here. No errors, no conflicts, all good, which is a nice thing to see. So what we want to do first is jump down to the very bottom. We want to click Pre-File on a network. Now you do need to have an active VATSIM account to do this, but I am going to just click Pre-File on VATSIM. This will open up a VATSIM window logged into my account. Check all the details, make sure they're right. I'm confident that they are, so we'll skip past that and click File Flight Plan. We'll get this green message at the top, Flight Plan Filed, enjoy your flight. And that means we're ready to connect to the VATSIM network when we're inside the simulator. Now, onto the OFP. This is your typical EasyJet operational flight plan. Now, the reason why I like this is because everything you need is on page 1. And it's clearly broken down and identified as to exactly what the information is. So we've got operational flight plan 1, we've got our flight number, we've got an ATC call sign, and we have our departure and arrival airports. We've also got information like our payload, our zero fuel weight, our total block fuels. We've got our trip wind, our cruise temperature, our cruise flight level, and our cost index. A lot of information that we need to plug into the MCDU when we actually get into the simulator. And then down here we've got our other information with regards to our taxi, our trip, etc. Don't have a squawk code yet because we'll get that from our ATC clearance, as we will for our runway and our flight plan clearance. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you inside SimBrief and Navigraph is the imports to chart section. Now, for this, you do need a paid subscription. I think it's around £8 or £9 a month. And what that does, it just gives you a whole lot more information that you can use both outside and inside the simulator. Now, as you can see, I've already got the simulator loaded. I've paused it mid-flight, and as we can see, my aircraft is currently sitting somewhere just to the south of Edinburgh. But one really good thing that Navigraph does is it gives you sat-nav when you're on the ground. So you're not always going to be familiar with the airports you're taking off or landing from. And you will sometimes get complex taxi instructions like taxi to hold Alpha 1 via Papa November Bravo Alpha November Charlie. Now, you need to know where they all are to navigate your way around. And what you can see here is, when you zoom into Navigraph, you can see all these taxiway identifiers, and your aircraft locator symbol will show up. This will show up exactly where your aircraft is in the simulator at any given time. So you can use this ultimately as sat-nav to get to where you've been told to go by air traffic control. Now, what we've also got inside Navigraph is we've got charts. So an example we'll look at today is our departure chart. So we've got a GoSam 1 Charlie departure. You want to click on these three dots and click on Open Chart. And this tells us exactly how we're going to be flying today. So we are going to be taking off via runway 24. Coming down, GoSam 1 Charlie departure. We're going to be intersecting the Edinburgh VOR, flying out towards Mavics, making a left-hand turn towards GoSam. And as we can see here, we've got our altitude restrictions on the chart as well. So we know when we climb out, we cannot be below 2,300 or above 6,000, 4.5, 6. We need to be at 6,000 feet here. We need to be at 6,000 feet here, unless otherwise instructed by air traffic control. Now, what we'll do is we'll close that chart, and then we'll bring up our arrival chart for Gatwick. So here's our Gatwick arrival chart. So we're following a DISIT arrival procedure today. And as you can see here, it's very clear that we need to be at flight level 200 for intercepting DISIT. We're going to follow our way down to 2 FOS, and it's at that point we'll have to reduce our speed to 250 knots before making a shallow left-hand turn towards Hawley, and then all the way around to intercept our final approach procedure into Gatwick, which will be represented in the approach chart, and we won't go through that until such time we have approach clearance via air traffic control. So everybody, that concludes what we need to do to actually set up our flight plan. Now the next thing to do is to jump into the simulator and load this into the aircraft. And I'm going to do that right now to show you how it's done. Okay guys, so now that we are in the aircraft in the simulator, what we're going to do now is set the aircraft up. And the first thing we need to do here, if you refer back to my previous video, is just set up the overhead panel. So we're going to use external ground power today. Enable batteries 1 and 2, and then remember the first thing you want to do here is come up to our aiders and align the navs. So now that the navs are set to alignment, we want to just work our way down this panel. No faults, everything's okay. That terrain fault will clear when we start the aircraft. Switch our ground control on, erase our cockpit voice recorder, and then test it to make sure it's working. We should get that tone. There we go. Switch your cruise supply off, and then come over to your centre panel. So we're going to test the fire loops on engine 1, fire loop on engine APU, and then our fire loop on engine 2, and then I'm just going to come down here while we're on fire loops and test our cargo smoke, which is working wonderfully. Now we're going to leave our fuel pumps off just now because we haven't actually set the fuel into the aircraft yet. Don't touch anything on our electrics, nothing on the air conditioning for just now. and then we'll skip down to our external lighting. So nav and logo on, wing lights on, everything else to remain off just now. We'll switch our master APU on, turn up our overhead integrated lighting, set our dome light, zoom out a little bit, and we'll test our antenna lighting. Everything there's working perfectly, so we'll switch that back off again. Want to switch our seatbelt signs on, or no smoking signs. Set our emergency exit lights to arm, and then for this moment in time, that concludes the overhead panel. So what we want to do next is come over to the flypad, and this is where we're going to load in our flight plan that we created on SimBrief earlier. So we've got Edinburgh to Gatwick, that's imported. So you can next go into your ground services, make sure that you've got your GPU, your chocks and cones and your stairs and everything in place. I'm going to leave that for just now, just for the purposes of this video, but for a bit more immersion in reality, you can toggle your jetway, pull your stairs, your cargo and your passenger doors. We're going to connect the tug up just now, just so it's ready to go when we are ready for pushback. Jump into mass and balance. We can see that we've got 150 planned passengers on the manifest today, 2.2 tonnes of cargo and 5.7 tonnes of fuel. So you want to load this into the aircraft. I'm going to select instant just for quickness for the purposes of this video, and then we want to send that into the MCDU, and you'll get that little success green light there. Now the next thing we want to do is jump up to our top bar, go to this icon here, and this will take us into our takeoff performance calculation. Double check everything in here is right, which it is. We've got Edinburgh runway 24 dry. Sync your weather data to make sure you've got the most up-to-date QNH wind and temperatures. Sync your load sheet, and then you want to click calculate down the bottom, and what this will do is it will calculate our V speeds for us and our flap settings. So as we can see today, we're on a V1 committed to takeoff speed of 136 knots, V rotate 136 knots, and single engine climb out V2 140 knots. We've got a flap setting of 1, down 0.2, transition altitude of 6,000 feet, and a flex 2 temperature of 66 degrees. Now the flex 2 temperature is important because we're going to be using the flex MCT detent when we're taking off, and that just helps to maximise the lifespan of the engine, reduce the noise, because if we're always taking off out of a full thrust toga, then we will impose more wear and tear on the engine. Now what we're ready to do now is jump down to the MCDU, and this is where we're going to put all that information into, so we can start planning our flight. So we'll jump down to the MCDU. You want to click on Init as your first page. Click on this Init Request button here, which will pull the critical information over from the flypad and your SimBrief flight plan. So in this from, we'll have Edinburgh to Gatwick. Then we've got an alternate airport. I have no idea where that is. I'm going to guess. Don't know. Tell me in the comment section where that is, because I have no idea. Type in our flight number, which today we're at EZ272. Now remember, that is not your ATC call sign, that's your flight number. We had a cost index of 8, and we had a cruising altitude of 36,000 feet. So you just click that in there. So the next page you want to go to is your flight plan, and this is where air traffic control is going to come in. Because as you can see, we've got our departure airport, and we've got a flight plan discontinuity. That's because we haven't programmed our departure sequence into the MCDU, and to do that, we have to get IFR and departure clearance from air traffic control. Now we're about to load up vPilot, which is the VATSIM pilots software, and we're going to contact the air traffic control and request this flight plan. Now when you're contacting the air traffic control, it's very, very straightforward. You want to tell them who you are, where you are, and what your intentions are, and then they'll repeat back to you any specific instructions they might have. So if we load up vPilot here, we can see that we've got Scottish Centre, Edinburgh Tower, and Edinburgh Ground. You've got an Edinburgh ATIS as well that will tell you your current information. We will get our QNH and our weather and runway information, and we can see we're on information Romeo, so we'll repeat that back to the controller. Now we don't have a delivery controller online, and that's who you would usually log your flight plan with. So what we're going to do is go to the next one down, which will be your ground controller, and as you can see here, that's on a frequency of 121.755. So what we'll do in the simulator, we'll come down to the radio panel, we'll tune in 121.755, and then when we activate that, the channel will come alive and we'll be able to communicate with the air traffic control. So let's wait for the channel to be clear, and we'll go ahead and do that just now. Edinburgh Ground, good evening. Easy 1872 for a radio check, please.
Easy 1872, Edinburgh Ground, good evening, Radio 5.
Readability 5, Easy 1872. So what we've done there is we've just asked the ground controller to confirm what our readability is. You'll get an answer from 1 through to 5, readability 5 being we can hear you loud and clear, with 1 being can't hear, last station, couldn't hear a thing you were saying, so you need to clear up that microphone audio. So the next thing we're going to do is request our IFR clearance, and we're going to follow the process I spoke you through a couple of minutes ago. So it's who you are, where you are,
Emirates 47 Juliet,
what your
Edinburgh
intentions
Ground,
are.
good evening, taxi stand 16 via Alpha and Lima.
So after this we'll jump in. Edinburgh Ground, good evening again. Easy 1872 is an aircraft A320neo on stand 104 with information Romeo requesting IFR to Gatwick.
Easy 1872, cleared Gatwick, Gotham 1 Charlie departure, squawk 6476.
Cleared to Gatwick via Gotham 1 Charlie departure, squawk 7476, Easy 1872.
Easy 1872, just confirm, squawk 6476.
6476 for Easy 1872.
Easy 1872, read back correct, QNH 1025.
1025, Easy 1872. So what he's also done there is I'm going to come off the channel so we're not getting interrupted there. So he's also gave us our QNH, which is our barometric pressure, which was also available on the ATIS information in vPilot. Bring that back up in here, we can see that our QNH is shown here. So what we want to do is plug that into the simulator just so we've got the right altitude readings. Okay, now we'll come back down to the MCDU because what we need to do now is put our, let's clear that fault, we're going to put our cleared departure sequence in. So you want to click on your departure airport, which is EGPH, click on departure. You want to go to your active runway, which is runway 24, you get that from your flight plan, and there we go. The very first SID, which is your standard instrument departure, is Gotham 1 Charlie, and that's what air traffic control have told us to fly. So click on that, click on insert, and there it is. Scroll down, and as you can see, there's no more flight plan discontinuity until we get to arrival. Scroll back up to our nav display, and there you can see there's a nice route all the way out to Gotham, sweeping left turn through to Fenwick, and then we'll carry on down to England. So what we need to do now is dial the squawk code that your traffic control gave us into the transponder. So we come over to your transponder section, which is this section labelled TCAS or ATC. Switch your transponder on, switch it to TARA, switch it to all. You've got a predefined squawk code of 2000 in here, so you want to clear that and then just type in 6476 or whichever squawk code air traffic control give you at the time. So we'll come back over to the MCDU. The next thing we want to do is go to our Init B page. Now there isn't an Init B button, so you simply just click on Init and then click the arrow to take you to the next page, and that'll bring up your fuel planning. Click on the fuel planning button. The simulator should then start doing your fuel planning and give you your confirmed block fuel. There we go, 5.6 tonnes. That's exactly in line with our flight plan, so we click confirm. Now the last thing to do in here is click on the performance tab, and this is our takeoff performance calculation. So we'll come back over to the flypad because we've obviously not transferred that in. You can manually type that in if you want. So there it is, 136, 136, 140, MCDU. We'll come back over to the MCDU, and there it is, it's transferred in. V1 136, V rotate 136, V2 140, flaps 1, flex 2 66, transition altitude 6,000 feet. Now what I like to do, just while we're waiting on the EPU firing up, which is what we're going to do right now in the overhead panel, we're going to click our fuel pumps on, and then we've started the APU as well. So I like to just give myself a little departure briefing. So to do that, we're going to load up Navigraph charts. Now as you can see in here, we're going to pull our flights bar out, and we're going to go over to this left hand bar, and we can see here we've got our Gotham 1 Charlie departure loaded in. So you click these three dots, open chart, and then we can just have a quick study of the planned departure sequence. So as we can see here, we're coming out of run. By the way, this is good because your aircraft locator also shows up when you're in chart mode, so you can see which waypoint you're about to hit. So we can see we're coming out of runway 24, down the Gossam 1 Charlie, intersecting the Edinburgh VOR, making a shallow right hand turn, never exceeding 6,000 feet, and always above 4,500 feet, 2,300 at the VOR. And then we're going to make a nice sweeping left turn round to Gossam at 6,000 feet. So what we'll do is, we will go up to the modes selector, autopilot panel, and we'll crank our altitude up to 6,000 feet. So that will just reduce our workload for us when we've taken the aircraft into the sky and we're not messing around with air traffic control, mode selectors, and anything else that might come with a takeoff sequence. So now that our APU is showing available, we're going to start our APU bleed to get bleed air into those packs and into those so we can get those engines running as well. But before we do any sort of pushback and taxi, we need to get clearance from air traffic control as well. Now, to get flight plan clearance, what we're going to do is jump out onto the active ground channel, and when we've got a clear space, we're just going to again tell the controller who we are, where we are, and what we want to do, and then follow their instructions. So the channel sounds clear, so let's jump on. Edinburgh ground, good evening, Easy 1872, stand 104, ready for push and start, please.
Easy 1872, stand 104, push and start approved.
Push and start approved, Easy 1872. So now that push and start's approved, what we want to do is set our park and brake off. We've got the tug disconnected. Switch our engine mode selector to ignition start. Come over to our Phoenix logo, ground services, disconnect the GPU, and then we can start our pushback. Now the aircraft's pushing back, we want to come over and we want to start engine 2.
Shuttle 9 Yankee, stand 9, push and start approved, face east.
Okay.
Easy 4862, contact Edinburgh Tower.
Had a wee issue with my throttle quadrant there, it was shown as not idle. So we'll just take this aircraft round.
Thanks for the have a good night.
We have some traffic here behind us, this might not be real traffic, so hopefully our traffic control manage this one properly. So now engine 2 is ramping up, we'll come back down and we'll start up engine 1. Sweep the aircraft round so we can get lined up here. And we're going to have a crash here. Luckily there's no crash modelling with the aircraft in the simulator because he's about to pass right through us. Now, once that ghost has went through us and we've completed our pushback, there are some other things we have to do. So finish our pushback, we'll click our park and brake on, take the tug away, that's fine. So we have one engine available, so we're going to go ahead, switch the APU bleed off, switch the master switch off, switch our taxi lights on, make sure everything else is good to go. There's our pack full starting to clear because we've got our engine running. Forgot to put our beacon light on, that's a big slap in the wrist. And then we want to do is just configure the aircraft before takeoff. So what I like to do is come down here to the ECAM, switch takeoff config, and then we'll get these reminders of things that we have to do through this checklist. So the electronic checklist shows us that we have to put our auto brake on max. So here's your auto brake section. Click on max. We have to go to the cabin. Tell the cabin we're getting ready for takeoff. Set our spoilers to arm. Spoilers to arm. Set our flaps to takeoff setting. We had setting 1. And then when the cabin tells they're ready, we'll get a buzzer coming through from them. So we need our parking brakes on. We've got a yellow predictive wind shear off, so we come back down. Wind shear on, weather system on, GCS on. Let's turn the lighting up a little bit because it's starting to get dark. Engines have started, so we'll set this into mode normal. Cabin cylinders are ready. Click takeoff config. Takeoff config normal. So this aircraft is now fully configured for taxi. Now, this guy in front of us, I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's online, AI, or even on VATSIM. So what we'll do is, we'll go ahead and we'll just request our taxi clearance regardless.
Easy 78 Yankee Hotel, Edinburgh Ground, good evening, hold Alpha 12, expect stand 25.
Holding Alpha 12, expect stand 25, 78 Yankee Hotel.
Actually, Easy 78 Yankee Hotel, continue taxi Alpha Lima Golf stand 25.
Continue taxis Alpha Lima Golf stand 25, 78 Yankee Hotel.
Edinburgh Ground, Easy 1872 is ready for taxi. There is an aircraft in front of us. I don't know if it's online or not.
Easy 1872, yes, that should just be pulling in to your right. Any second now, taxi Echo hold Echo 1 after the traffic.
Hold Echo 1 after the traffic, Easy 1872. So they've now told us to hold Echo 1. Now, if we want to jump back on to Navigraph, we can see here, we're already on Echo. He's told us to hold Echo 1, so here's Echo 2, and we've got Echo 1.
Edinburgh Ground, Emirates 21 Papa stand 203, aircraft type A319, request an ISR clearance to Newcastle.
So now that traffic's out the way. We'll take our parking brake off, and then we'll roll the aircraft forward nice and slowly.
Emirates 21 Papa, Edinburgh Ground, good
To
evening,
Echo 1.
cleared Newcastle, Tower 6 Charlie departure, squawk 5664.
Cleared Newcastle on the Tower 6 Charlie departure, squawk 5664, Emirates 21 Papa.
Emirates 21 Papa, read back correct.
Edinburgh Ground, can you please repeat the taxi instructions? Easy 1872, that's me fully ready.
Easy 1872, continue taxi, holding point Delta 1, runway 24 via Echo and Alpha.
Taxi 2 and hold Delta 1 via Echo Alpha runway 24, Easy 1872. Okay, so we've got those instructions. We're just going to follow the cleared taxiway. Now, as we get closer to the runway, air traffic control will give us instructions to contact the tower frequency. What I like to try and do is dial that into the simulator prior to getting to the runway, and then when we get onto the tower controller, we want to try and activate the departure controller or the centre controller before we get into the air, just to try and reduce that workload again. Okay, so this is turned on to taxiway Alpha.
Ethiopian 701, taxi Alpha, hold Alpha 12, expect stand 15.
Now there's a lot of traffic at this airport here, so forgive me if we get some FPS issues when we start to do the takeoff roll.
Stand 6, push and start, approve, face east. Push start, approve, face east, stand 6, front line,
Edinburgh Ground, Easy 1872's got Jet 2 traffic dead ahead on Alpha.
Easy 1872, there shouldn't be anything on Alpha facing your direction, so I think that's probably not VATSIM traffic.
Roger. So we just confirm there that queue of aeroplanes isn't actually anything to do with us. Don't know what they're doing there. Bit of a traffic jam getting into the airport. Looks like that aircraft over there is holding up the whole queue.
Easy 1872, contact Edinburgh Tower 118.705.
118.705, Easy 1872, thanks for the ATC. So we've been instructed to contact the tower controller. So we're just going to come down to our communication panel, dial in 118.705.
Speedbird 118, do you think you're going to clear the Easy AC-20 behind?
And we're on the grass because we weren't watching where we're going. So this is one of the pitfalls of not having a co-pilot. Edinburgh Tower, Easy 1872, holding Delta 1. Okay, so we've been instructed to hold Delta 1 and contact the tower controller. We're not getting anything on the frequency, so we're just going to come down and double check that we've dialed in the right frequency and then recontact the controller. So we were instructed to contact 118705. We've dialed in 119705. So that's us on the frequency now. Edinburgh Tower, easy 1872 Delta 1.
Roger, hold Delta 1.
Hold Delta 1, easy 1872. So he's just instructed us to hold Delta 1. We've got traffic on the runway right now, so imagine once he's gone, assuming we have nothing inbound, we should get the clearance to take off.
Speedbird 36 Romeo, welcome to Edinburgh. Taxi left onto Alpha, hold Alpha 12, contact ground on 121.755.
Left on Alpha, hold Alpha 1, contact ground 121.755, 36 Romeo.
Hold Alpha 12.
Hold Alpha 12, 36 Romeo.
Easy 1872 via Delta 1, line up runway 24.
Line up runway 24, easy 1872. So we've been instructed to line up, so we'll switch our lights on. Take our park and brake off. And then throttle up nice and slowly. And then just enter the runway, make sure there's no traffic. Look all clear. So folks, I'm really sorry. I suspect that we may get some FPS hits here as we start takeoff roll, but once we get into the air, things should look a little bit better. Now if we get a wee chance here, when we go onto the runway, I'm going to try and dial in, I was going to say dial in departure control, but they are offline, so we're going to be instructed to activate our Unicom frequency, which, so it's 122.8. Now our Unicom frequency is just our unmonitored frequency where we have to actively advise other aircraft in the area of what we're doing. Clear for takeoff runway 24, easy 1872. There's our takeoff clearance. So we're going to ramp our thrust up to 50% N1. Then once we've confirmed moving away symmetric thrust, we're going to enter the flex MCDU tent. Just manage that rudder. Try and keep yourself in the centre line. 100 knots. $120. V1. Rotate. Positive rate. Gear up. Okay, then we're going to engage autopilot, and that will start to automatically follow our climb profile and our departure sequence. Then we're going to put ourselves into lever climb. That will activate auto thrust, and we'll shortly be instructed to leave the channel and go on to our Unicom frequency. 122.8, have a nice evening, easy 1872. We're going to take our flaps up to 0, come back down, go into Unicom, and then because we've no controller, what we want to do is make sure that we're following these altitude restrictions, because there's no ACT to tell us to deviate otherwise. Obviously if we have ATC online, they might clear us to climb straight to 22,000 feet, but we don't have that, and we can't take that risk with other aircraft in the area. There's the 4th road rail bridges and road bridges behind us, and the new Queen's Ferry crossing. We'll make that shallow right hand turn. That takes us towards our Gossam 1. We'll bring up the charts here, and as you can see we've just made that shallow turn. We'll come down towards Mavics, and then we'll make that sharp, that sweeping left hand turn, a sharp left hand turn at Fennec, and then head on down to London Gatwick. We're going to jump back inside the cockpit here and do our checks and make sure everything is looking as it should. There's us approaching our 6,000 feet altitude, the aircraft starting to level off, and we're going to stick at that 250 knots because that was on our profile of 250 below 10,000 feet. And that is your standard speed restriction at that altitude. Come down, just make sure everything else is looking as it should. Let's scan the overhead panel, make sure we have no faults, no alarms, no warning lights. Everything's looking good. We look out the window. We've got a transition altitude of 6,000 feet. So we're going to go ahead and activate our standard barometric pressure QNH. Clear that warning. It's getting a little bit dark in here, so I think we've got a warning light coming on. But discrepancy, that's fine, we can clear that. Okay, so that ultimately concludes how to set up your flight plan, your MCDU, and then communicate effectively with air traffic control on your flight clearance, pushback and taxi out to the runway, and then your subsequent takeoff. So I'm going to carry this flight on down to Gatwick, and then when we get another controller online, I'll put another video up demonstrating how to manage the centre controllers who give you a lot of vectoring data, especially when you're in an approach frequency and it's a busy airspace, and it's something that's quite get used to, because you will get a lot of vectoring data, a lot of altitude instructions, and I'm not going to lie, it can be quite difficult keeping up with all the instructions and all the traffic on the frequency, especially since you have no co-pilot. So you're doing everything, and when you're on the 2D flight sim, it can make it a bit harder. I do have a VR headset, and I do intend to put up some virtual reality content. It can be slightly easier when you're on virtual reality because you're not having to use the mouse to look around the cockpit and select various different options. So again folks, thanks very much for watching. I really hope you found this video informative, and I hope that at least one person gets a little bit of help out of it, and it gives you that little bit more confidence to get on the VATSIM network and start speaking to air traffic control, because out of all the add-ons and the mods, even the Phoenix simulated aircraft, the VATSIM network just adds an unparalleled level of immersion. Giving you that live, real person air traffic control is wonderful. And if there's anybody out there similar to myself who's actually doing flight training, it actually helps you with real world as well. It gets you used to talking on the frequency, it gets you up to speed with the lingo, and it will just help build your confidence the more you use it. So thanks again folks. If you got any benefit at all and you like this channel and you want to see more content of this type, then please click like, subscribe, and by all means leave comments in the description of things you want to see coming up on the channel in the future, and I'll do my best endeavours to get that on for you. So I'm Jamie, and this has been the Flying Scot Sim, and thanks again for watching. Take care.